What is going on, everybody? It is Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we are going to be doing the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL draft. If you guys are new, feel free to stick around, like, comment, subscribe. You guys know how to use YouTube. Let's get it up to 7.5, and then to 8, then to 10, and then on in terms of the thousands of subscribers for the show. Let's get going. Starting off with my number one quarterback, it is Bryce Young. You know, he weighed in a lot more than expected, but I don't think anybody's fooled by it. It's kind of like a fat guy with a beard. It's like you're not really fooling anybody there, but there's a reason he didn't test. I have a weird feeling he was purposely put on a shit ton of weight just to be able to at least look over 200 pounds, and that's perfectly fine. But the fact is, he's still very short, and that 5'10" figure definitely doesn't fully feel accurate, but it is what it is. Bryce Young still is an elite processor. He is an elite commander of the field. He drifts a little bit. A lot of people say he's mini Mahomes. I say his playstyle is a lot like Deshaun Watson's, but it doesn't really matter. He has elite level comparisons. Just the physical measurables are what's really holding him back. And I'm excited to see if he's able to, be able to deal with it in the NFL. Some dream fits. They do kind of blend a little bit with realism here. Obviously, that number one overall pick, he's going to be perfectly fine with Frank Reich. I think Frank can adjust to a quarterback under 6'2", but that is yet to be seen. I think Steichen could obviously work with a mobile quarterback who's a really good leader of the locker room, just as long as he does not get hit the way Jalen Hurts would. And then, obviously at number 2, I think he'll be perfectly fine. Ryans is used to having a quarterback on the other side that is very good at picking apart and processing the field, so I think he will be A-okay. Another thing of note, he's not going to have the cannon that a couple of these other quarterbacks do, and that's, I think, why he didn't throw at the combine, is because comparatively he doesn't have that zip, but he's still very, very adequate as a passer. Next, we got Anthony Richardson. Very hot take. A lot of people are going to say CJ is number 2. I have them literally lined up at the same exact one. You could say 2A, 2B right here. Depends on which type of flavor of player you want. Do you want the more athletic, higher upside player, or do you want someone who's a little bit more of that ball placement specialist, as CJ calls himself? We'll talk about CJ in just one slide, but Anthony set the world on fire. This is actually the exact same top 4 that I think I started out the year on, so funny to see that everything shaped up the way it originally looked. But AR has the most potential, man. He could be a top 3 QB in the NFL if he does end up panning out. Not many guys have that arm strength, that speed, and that work ethic. He's somebody who's very introspective. You could tell in his interviews he's very disappointed with himself. He looks like he wants to work on himself, and he wears glasses. So I might be a little bit pulled in terms of that, but I don't think he's just, Cam Jackson. I think there's a little bit of Josh Allen in there as well. I think he's kind of more that upside passer. I never really saw that from Cam Newton the way I have in terms of Josh Allen. I think Lamar, his running ability is incredible. Obviously, I think that as a running back, or as that sounds bad, as a running player, he's going to be almost as effective as Lamar. Different style. He's that Cam Newton build. But I do think that you could say Newton times Josh Allen. I think he's just a better runner and a better athlete than Cam Newton was. And that's tough to say because Cam was super Cam. But I do think that, there was eventually a guy to replace him, and I think that guy is here. I do think Anthony Richardson could end up being the best quarterback in the NFL, arguably. It's just a very low probability, but sometimes you just got to roll the dice, and I think some good spots for him to go would be, again, with Steichen as well as Frank Reich, and dream fit, Brian Dable had to throw that in there for fun. Now we have CJ Stroud, again, kind of 2A, 2B here. They're literally lined up, I think, at 8 and 9 on my big board. Ball placement specialist, he says it himself. But, it's kind of hard to say he's going to do anything better than he did in college. And fortunately for him, he ended off better than any other guy could have. Playing against a lights-out Georgia defense who whooped the ass of another team in the franchise, into the championship. That's just one hell of a way to end it off. He did a great job versus Georgia. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to get 5 first-round quality wide receivers in the NFL. You're not going to have multiple high-end day 2 to day 1 offensive linemen in the NFL very often, and then have star running backs consistently, have a solid enough defense that usually, besides coaching, is pretty damn dominant. So it's very tough to say he's going to perform any better in the NFL than he did in college, and he couldn't beat the one rival he really needed to. And Michigan got him multiple times. I don't know the last time that a starting Ohio State quarterback that had this much hype couldn't beat Michigan. Of course, Michigan's done a great job, so tip the cap to them for being so competitive. But when you have that good of a team, it's kind of hard to lose. And he did more than he should have, in my opinion. But, again, he could end up improving in the NFL. You saw during that game versus Georgia, he started using his mobility a little bit more. So there's some untapped potential there, and he could definitely become a better version of Matt Stafford that might have a little bit more mobility. Obviously, going to the Lions would be a good spot, as well as, the Seahawks. I think that's a good location as well. Those are dream fits. He's, I think, going to be going top 2 for sure, but there's always that variability that you could see Anthony Richardson sneak above him, depending on what type of player the team is looking for. Next, you got Will Levis. Some people are saying, oh my God, Will Levis is now getting heavily underrated. Some people are still saying he's overrated. I think it's kind of a nice balance right now. He's somebody who could flex above Anthony Richardson, depending on whether a GM's about to get fired or not. But he also is, realistically, everybody knows the talent level is not at the level of somebody like Anthony Richardson. So it just really depends. It's another guy where, you could get some really good consistent play out of him. I think Ryan Tannehill is a very good idea in terms of a guy to comp him to. Sometimes Ryan Tannehill makes a weird decision. It's like, what the hell are you doing? I think that's very similar to Will. And I think he has a stronger arm than Ryan Tannehill. He's a better deep ball passer. But I do think, honestly, I should have probably tossed in the Titans as a dream fit here over the Panthers. I love the idea of Frank Reich getting his hands on a QB with decision issues. But, there's just some stupid plays that Will Levis does. He's obviously one of the older quarterbacks of the class. But he is somebody where I would trust him leading my franchise in terms of not being a cancer in the locker room. And to me, that's great. Like, that's a huge aspect that not many people think of is, that leadership quality. And that's something where you have all the talent in the world like Carson Wentz. But when you walk into a locker room, no one respects him. And it shows in the offseason. And then I think it continues to be a compounding part of your game that not many people focus on, because maybe year 1, year 2, it doesn't matter, but by year 10, it really does. So that's where we're at right there. Hendon Hooker, the rainbow ball god himself. He ran a very unique offense there at Tennessee. Mobility is incredible. The big issue is that injury, man. It happened to his biggest asset, and that is his legs. He's also older. I think he's going to be 25 starting out the year. That's going to be pretty tough, but I do think he comps very well to Tyler Huntley, who I was very fond of. And that was, I think, the first time I ever did rankings of the 2020 draft class. So I do think that he does have a bright future. I'm very excited to see where he does end up. But I really want him to have a chance to start. And I think the Seahawks, if they want to spend one of those second-round picks on him, I'm more than fine doing that. But it really depends on how heavily a team's going to weight that age and that injury. Because ACLs are kind of common nowadays, so we could see them like that mitigated a little bit in terms of the impact, but I highly doubt that's going to mitigate the way that, we probably think. And you look at Lamar Jackson with some of his injury concerns, and he's not getting the type of respect and money that if he was maybe a different style of player would be acquiring, would be commanding. So it's intriguing to check that out. It is. I'm very intrigued to see how the Lamar Jackson situation affects a guy who, obviously Tyler Huntley is an understudy of Lamar Jackson, could fit a very similar system. Another dream fit for him is actually the Baltimore Ravens if they do not want to keep Tyler Huntley for the long run. Tanner McKee is next. It's kind of a consensus top 6 here, but he's a big dude at 6'6". He has upside because he ran a really shitty offense, but there's just some times where I don't always trust him. Like, processing is very solid all around until it reaches the red zone here and there. And then it's like, okay, why are you playing? Like, why are you throwing that ball? Versus USC, I'm really tapping into that tape right now. He looked absolutely useless in that red zone. And red zone was his specialty, I thought. And it just really wasn't the case. He's coming from a very weird system there, mesh system. I hate it with a passion, but, it is what it is. Wake Forest kind of popularized it. They've been using it as well there in Stanford. So, I can't really do much with that, but it is a potential negative, and he doesn't use his legs at all. I think my comp at the start of the year, I think, was Jared Goff, and I think it's just a worse version of him. And I want him to go to a place where he could eventually learn to start, or just be a really consistent backup in a good system. Next, we got Aidan O'Connell, someone who I have a lot of happiness thinking of. Oh, that is a weird way to say it. He's someone who I think very fondly of, and I saw Payne Durham tape. Payne Durham's pretty damn solid as well, but this is a guy who's fairly consistent. He has a lot of experience throwing the ball. Purdue does like to toss the rock, but it's also someone who got some experience for some very good players, some very good corners like Joey Porter Jr. So he is seasoned versus good talent. Also, in the combine, he lit it up. He was probably the most underrated player there. And throwing against air, yeah, it could be a little skewed. But I think his talent definitely showed when you were watching him next to Will Levis. And he's putting balls arguably better than he does. And we're talking about a top 10, top 4 pick versus a guy who's probably not going to go until day 3. But I think that he's definitely a very solid player. I don't think he's the best athlete in the world. You guys can correct me on that one. But again, I copy and pasted the same spots. I think he would work in a very similar system as probably what CJ would run, as well as Tanner McKee. Let's go on. Stetson Bennett is next. Frames the real issue here. Potential maturity issues. Again, he kind of got arrested for DUI or something in Dallas. But, he's someone who works on himself. I trust him in a locker room. Maybe outside, not so much. That could go away in time. I do believe that. I just think that he's going to be a really solid backup quarterback who could step in and win some games. He's come up clutch in certain situations, but he's also looked like a deer in headlights in certain situations. He's had an amazing surrounding cast, better than arguably anybody except CJ Stroud. So, he has had it really good, but his mobility, his surprising athleticism definitely is something that is workable. So, I don't really have a comparison for him, but he's somebody where I could totally see him being a Cowboys backup, steps in for Dak when he continues to hurt his ankle or get hurt every single year, and then be that dude similar to Cooper Rush to win every single game, because he's not really going to be the guy who loses you many games. He's used to being able to play and keep a lead for your team. Next, we got Jake HAENER. Somebody who I've been very fond of for the past year. I saw him tear an ACL, and I think he led a 2-minute drill drive that game with that torn ACL. Just one hell of a leader. Someone you want in the locker room, similar to Colt McCoy. I don't think the exact play style is the same, but I think the mentality is there, and I think he'll be a 15-year guy in the league. Just probably won't take many reps starting. So I think he'd probably be a third stringer, someone who will be the flex guy between practice squad and active, but someone who I have a lot of respect for, and he's a really good leader. Definitely someone who belongs in a locker room. I don't know if he gets drafted, but I hope he does and gets that money. Then last but not least, CLAYTON Tune. I saw him cut up my SMU Mustangs in person. To be fair, we picked him off twice or 3 times that game, so that was pretty entertaining. But, he graded as one of the best quarterbacks PFF-wise, solid enough athlete. He's just kind of a guy who slips up from time to time, and it's perfectly fine. People do that. I just don't really think he has the upside of an actual starter in the NFL. He has a good frame to him, 6'2", 220, but I highly doubt that he's going to actually get any meaningful reps in the NFL. I could be wrong, but he also kind of looked a little bit mediocre there at the combine as well. I do think he gets drafted, though. He is used to being able to pass in an air raid style system, so you do see that production on tape. So that is going to be the list. Let me know who you guys wish were on here. I mean, there's probably going to be the Jaren Hall truthers. I'm not a huge fan of him myself, but, he's somebody a lot of people do actually quite enjoy him. He is my quarterback 11, so someone who just missed the list. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you on the far side. Peace.